so I think most of you have seen or been here for one of my prior presentations. So this is going to be a little bit of a recap from that, so it's not going to be super boring, guys. And then we're going to kind of expand on some of that as well. And as the prior presentations, if you guys have questions, please, at any point, raise your hand. We'll talk about it at that time. Sound good? Is everybody super excited?
Yeah.
So, this is a part of a presentation that I did a few weeks ago at the University of Akron for another group of high school students. So they bussed in, it was like 350 students. They came in for the day, and their whole day was spent on financial topics. And so this was part of my presentation that day. So the basics, we talked about this before: savings versus checking accounts, debit versus credit cards. We're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this, but who can tell me the difference between credit and debit cards? We're not going to go to the next slide until you, sir.
Debit card, money you already have. Credit card.
Yeah, very concise. Debit card, money you already have. Credit card, other people's money. Yeah. So the big thing behind that is when we talk about debit, credit cards, or any sort of debt obligation, we have what's called collateralized debt. Meaning you borrow something, what is the backing behind that? You take out a car loan to buy a car. The car is the collateral. So if you default on your car loan, the lender says, cool, I'm just going to take your car. So other people's money with the credit card, that is uncollateralized debt. You're promising the credit card company to pay it back later. The debit card, that just comes out of your account immediately. So if you don't have money, you don't need to buy that. Make sense? So one of the big things about making sure you have some financial security is just tidying up things. Just like your life in general, if things are in disarray, you lose track of things. Same goes for your finances. Big thing is budgeting. What do you bring in on a monthly basis from your jobs? What are you spending on a monthly basis for cell phones, rent, food, candy, whatever? Then the other side of that is determining discretionary income. Who can tell me what discretionary income is? Who's got a guess? No guess? Discretionary income is money that you have discretion over, meaning it's not pegged for anything on a monthly basis, and you get to decide how you get to spend that money. So it's not bills money, it's your fun money. So understanding how much discretionary income you have helps you so you don't overspend what you have each month. Tracking income and expenses, monitor your financial accounts. Before, and it wasn't even that long ago, maybe like 10, 15 years ago, how you monitored your financial accounts was you got a check register with your checkbook. Every check you wrote, flip to the back, fill in who you made the check payable to and for how much, and then when you got your monthly statement from your bank account, you made sure all that matched up. Tedious, right? Now, everything's online. You can do it on your phone. You can follow along and make sure that what you're spending is what you're spending and it's not been pirated. And you can also track those expenses and categorize them into dining, utilities, entertainment, those types of things. And even with the advancement of technology, so I got an email from my credit card company couple days ago that just said, hey, it seems like you put a really big tip on that restaurant bill. Is that you, or did the server like take some liberties with your credit card receipt? It's like, no, it's fine. But it's those types of things that technology is aiding and helping out and catching things like that. Where I had a really large expense a couple weeks ago, and the credit card company said, wow, that's out of whack. You normally don't spend that much. Is this legit before we process it? So monitoring your financial accounts is much easier today with technology, but doesn't mean that you just ignore it and wait for an email from your credit card company to do that. So credit report, we talk about this all the time. Credit reports are important, especially going forward with so much fraud out there. So you check your credit report to make sure that the accounts that are connected to your social security number are yours and not from somebody in Kenya or where's those emails come from? Where they're like, oh, I'm the Saudi, or I'm the prince. Nigeria, thank you. So make sure that the account isn't for a Nigerian prince or something like that. But you also have to make sure that it's accurate for your life as well. And it could be super innocent things. I had a client that his credit report was all screwed up. Him and his wife were trying to buy a house and they couldn't because his credit report had a bunch of dings on it. He's like, I don't understand what's going on. So he's a pervert. Okay? He was working and sliced part of his finger off. Went to the hospital to get it fixed. And they said, hey, you got insurance? He's like, well, I don't have it on me. I lost my finger. And I just came to the hospital immediately because I wanted to deal with that. They said, okay, no problem. You got insurance, fine. Send it to us when you get back home. It's like, great. No big deal, right? The issue was immediately his case went to the uninsured pile at the hospital. And before he could even submit his insurance information. So now he's part of delinquent bill status and has this huge medical bill on his file that it says he owes. But in actuality, by the end of the day, his bill was paid off, but it's that crossing of paperwork that screwed him up. And now he's kind of battling with the credit bureaus to say, no, everything's fine, it's paid off. He has to work with the hospital to deal with it. He was turned over to a collection agency for, to collect nothing because it was already paid off. So it's innocent things like that that can screw up your credit report. So,
Can I ask a question? Graduates, how many of you are using the budgeting, using some kind of budgeting while you're in school? Okay, looks like about 60 or 70%.
so the big thing with discretionary income is in setting yourself up for the future is paying yourself first. This is a concept of saving, thinking about the things that you want or you want to do or pay for in the next 12 months and saying, okay, how am I going to get there? How am I going to pay for that? Pay yourself first just says, okay, instead of spending this money on whatever, I'm going to set it aside, and this is for me, for that vacation in 6 months, or that car I want to get in 12 months. Understanding needs versus wants. Who wants to take a stab at a need versus a want? Come on, guys. Thank you.
You need food to eat, but you want clothes. More clothes.
Important distinction. You need food to eat, but you want more clothes.
Yeah.
Awesome example. Or a want is the latest cell phone. Do you need it? Nah, you can probably get by for another 6 months or 12 months unless you drop it, maybe on purpose, crack the screen and get a new phone. Needs versus wants. Determine what's most important to get you by each month. Setting aside money for emergencies. You never know what comes up. And not having money set aside to take care of things that happen, then that can put you on your back foot. Because how are you going to pay for it? You're going to borrow it, or you're going to put you on a credit card. And if you have no plan to pay that off, then it's a vicious cycle to try and catch up on that. Planning for future purchases, we talked about that, and paying down debt. We'll get into that in just a second. Any questions, guys? So here's an example of a need versus a want. Who goes to Starbucks? We've got a few. Dunkin' Donuts. Yeah. So these are kind of wants, right? Do you need the Starbucks Frappuccino, Unicorn Frap, or whatever they got out now? Which absolutely looks disgusting. I don't know how anybody ate it. Did anybody have the Unicorn Frap? One person? Maybe two? Wasn't great? What do you think? It's disgusting. But talk to me. Tell me some other things that you guys spend money on that is kind of like the Starbucks thing. That you just kind of throw a couple bucks here and there on. Fast food. Yep. Anybody else? Spotify Premium. Yeah, good one. How much is that a month? $10. Okay. And premium instead of the free. Do you need it? I don't know. Good example. Who plays games on their phone and then is like, oh, well, I need more lives. It's only like another $1, right? But then if you have a really boring day and you're playing on your phone a lot, well, that's like $10 to keep refilling your lives. So this next slide isn't saying do away with your Starbucks or your coffee or your Spotify Premium. It's more of think about how small transactions or small dollar amounts can add up and be really impactful for your life. So, this is the true math here. Grande, Java, chip, Frappuccinos, $4.75. Let's say you go 3 times a week, $14.25. At the end of the month, you spend $62 on Frappuccinos. And let's say, at the end of the year, $741. That's a lot of money, right? So at the end of 4 years, let's say you're a freshman in high school or college, and at the end of your high school or college career, what do you get for Frappuccinos 3 times a week? Pre-diabetes, maybe? I don't know. So, if you took that $62 and just put it into a savings account, and at the end of 4 years, you got over $3,000. Now, who would rather have $3,000 instead of Frappuccinos? Yeah, get your hands up. Everybody wants $3,000. Okay, simple example, you get $3,000. But let's take it a step further. And you can apply this to any situation. This just happens to be a car. You could put it against your student loan debt. Well, let's say you wanted to get a car, $15,000. Typical car loans are 5 years. And average interest rate right now about 5%. So the car costs $15,000 to buy it. But add in that interest, it's almost $17,000, so almost $2,000 more in interest. So if you took your frat money at the end of 4 years, a little over $3,000, and used that as a down payment, your initial loan would be $12,000, and at the end of the 5 years, that total cost of that car was $16,580. So you save $400 in interest, right? Is that a big deal? To some people, yeah. But let's say you got the car, $15,000, and you put that extra $62 a month on your monthly payments. So now your car's paid off the entire year early, and it costs you $500 less than if you didn't do that. So these are some of the things to think about. Like, okay, a couple dollars here and a couple dollars there, no big deal, right? But when you look at it in the bigger picture of things, huge impact. Does that make sense, guys?
Hey, Mark,
Coffee for $1, no matter what.
What's that?
It's at McDonald's.
McDonald's has coffee for $1. Okay. So even this is me saving you money. On a mortgage, and I don't remember what this is, but on a house. So let's take it up from a frappuccino to a car to a house. If you make one extra mortgage payment a year, and you have a 30-year mortgage to pay off your house, do you know how much faster you will pay off your mortgage?
I think you knock like a couple years off the total life of the mortgage.
I think it's like 4 years. So you pay a 30-year mortgage on a house off in 26 years if you make one. So if you make 13 payments a year rather than 12. So let's say your house payment is $1,000. What, 800 a month? Will be 800 a month. So if you pay one extra $800 payment in a year, you'll knock that mortgage 4 years off that mortgage. It's very the whole compounding thing, and I'm sure EJ, who majors in both finance and accounting, can give you a whole lesson on it. But it is staggering when you start to do the numbers. Now remember one thing, it also works the opposite way. When you get in debt and you are being charged interest, that same compounding effect, and that's why people who start to accumulate debt and it gets out of hand so quickly and you can't stop it. It's like a train racing down a track. So good debt, good ways to manage it. Watch out for the bad debt, bad ways.
And if you guys are looking at the dollar amounts and saying, oh, big deal, I'm saving $500 over the life of the loan, whatever. The biggest thing is shortening how long you're paying on that and freeing up that obligation every single month. Because every single month you're paying that money, or they take your car, or they take your house. Paying it off earlier, now you don't have that obligation and you can do something else with those dollars every single month. That's the bigger piece to it. So the key to success is having manageable debt and discipline. What does that mean? Don't overdo it on your purchases. Be realistic. Do you need the new Mercedes? Yeah, you can probably afford it, but how tight is your budget going to be? How much debt are you going to take on to get that? Or buying a house. Oh yeah, I can make that monthly payment for that house. It's going to be awesome. It's huge. And it's got a pool, everything. But if all of your monthly income's going to make that payment, what's the rest of your daily life look like? You can't do anything. You can't get your frappuccino. You can't put chlorine in the pool because you can't afford it. So it's thinking about those things and having manageable debt. Just because you think you can afford it, thinking long term of the ongoing costs. So we talked about the credit score a little bit. The higher your credit score, the lower your interest rate. And it's important that you keep up on this because it impacts everything. You want a car loan, you want a mortgage, your car insurance premiums could be high if you have poor credit. Because here's the connection that the insurance companies are looking at. If you're careless with your finances and your assets, you're probably careless with your car. And you're going to have more claims because you're fender benders or whatever. And they're going to charge you more premiums to compensate for that. So it doesn't sound connected, but a lot more companies and account type things are looking at your credit score, not just for debt purposes. Does that sound good to you guys? Questions? You guys are low energy today. Maybe I should have brought in the frappuccinos for everybody.
How many people know what their credit score is right now? Raise your hand. Hi, raise your hand. I see like 3 people that know it. So what is your recommendation on that?
To develop or to build your credit score?
Well,
Yeah,
first of all, knowing it and what the advantage is to that. Do they have to worry about that now? Do they have time? When is the right time to know your credit score and be working on doing something about it?
you should always be working on your credit score and your credit history. Knowing it on a regular basis is, I think, less important. But having an idea of what it is before you go into a borrowing situation is important. So working on it. How do you work on your credit score? How do you build it? Be responsible. If you have a bill in your name, the easiest one is a cell phone bill. Pay it. Pay it on time. If you're late a couple of days, yeah, that's going to be a little ding on you, but it's not going to be a huge impact. But having bills paid on time and having a history of paying bills is good for your credit. Another way to do it is you can get a credit card. A lot of people think credit cards are evil. In some regards, they can be if you misuse them. But if you get a credit card, this is what I did when I was just going into college. I got a credit card. I think my limit was $500 a month, and they gave me 3% rewards on gas. So I was like, great. I'm gonna get a credit card, and all I'm gonna do is use it for my gas purchases for my car. I'll get bonuses back, and I'll pay it off on a monthly basis because I'm gonna have to pay for gas anyways. So I might as well just put it on a credit card and pay it off on a monthly basis. That helped build my credit score. It wasn't a burden to overcome. Now, don't get a credit card and say, cool, I'm gonna get a TV now because I have all this credit available to me, and then you don't pay it off. That's gonna hurt you. So you guys have seen this before. I like showing this because it's a big deal to me. So currently, this is from a couple years ago, but I use my credit card for all my purchases, and then at the end of the month, I pay it off. So this month, I happen to have a $2,500 credit card balance. So think of some things that cost, $2,000, $2,500. So you got a giant TV, surround sound, Blu-ray DVD player, and an Xbox. Okay, you really went all out. But you had no way to pay that off, and the credit card companies make it, relatively easy to carry a balance. They say, great, you owe us $2,500, but we won't default on this card if you give us $62 this month. Oh, I can do that, right? But here's the damage. If you only make the minimum payment, it'll take you 12 years to pay off that $2,500. And at the end, it will cost over $5,000. That's not a good deal, right? So that's the danger of the credit cards, because they charge such a high interest rate. You can see here, 28.99%. It's ridiculous. So college financial aid. So how many are in college already? All right, a lot of people. Great. How many of you guys got some sort of financial aid, scholarships, anything like that? So basically every single person that's in college has some sort of aid. All right. So some of the big differences or options that are available for financial aid, public versus private, subsidized or unsubsidized. Who's got a definition for me on that? Right, so your government loans, there's two types, subsidized and unsubsidized. So the subsidized, as soon as you take out a loan, interest is racking up. On the subsidized, the government is paying the interest that accrues on a regular basis. So if you took out a loan for $5,000 for subsidized, when you graduate, the amount due is $5,000, and then that increases because now interest is accruing on that you're responsible for. The flip side of that is if you had $5,000 in unsubsidized loans, at the end of your college career, now that's $7,000 that's due and growing. Scholarship funds, there's a lot of money that's available out there for you guys. It's just a matter of finding it. So when you go to the financial aid office, they'll talk to you about scholarships and talk to you about how to apply for financial aid and how to get some private loans and some public loans, things like that. But there's some effort on your guys' part to find that other free money. Most universities have a general scholarship fund. Anyone can apply to it, you fill out the application, write an essay, great. You're in the pool, you may get some money. But what people forget about is the universities have colleges and departments. So if you're in the College of Business, because you're an accounting student, now you have 2 more places to look for free money. Because what happens is donors, alumnus of the school will often donate money and say this is for scholarships, but it's for business students only, or college of education. This is for college of education students only. And then it breaks it down even further. But if you don't go looking for this, you're not going to know about it. So you can have free money or scholarships available to business students, and then for your degree, your specific degree, there's often scholarship funds for accountants or engineers, things like that. So you got to do a little digging. Questions, guys? Yes.
So, I'm just adding what you said. The free money thing really exists. Malone called me my last semester. Malone called me my last semester of school, like, hey, it was $2,000 and you can come. So I went to school of psychology. Well, that's not what it's called, but pretty much. And they found me $2,000 within like 30 seconds. So please utilize that because it does exist. Question I do have. So I start paying my student loan next month. Super excited. And like Great Lakes borrowing or whatever, they have like, okay, this is your monthly balance. So I have to pay like $195 a month. So I have to pay like $195 monthly, but that's not like, that's just what they have for me. So I was talking to my other friends who graduated, and they're like, you should just go on their website and like have to do it like based on your income, and it would be like no more than $100. I have no problem paying the $200 monthly, but would it be better to like get that shortened to say it was $65 monthly and just pay $200 and just have them put on the principal? Or just pay the $195?
Great question. And I actually have a next section on that, so I'll come back to that. But that takes us into, out of all the college students, I think all of them have some sort of loans. And you get the question of, how do I pay off my student loans? And you have to pay attention to some of the marketing and what you'll read on a Facebook ad or something like that. Things pop up all the time. It's like, that doesn't make any sense. That sounds bogus. But think about your own situation and what's going on. So there's a couple different ways when it comes time to pay off your student loans or start paying on them of how you go about doing that. They set up your payment plan, and it's fixed for a number of years. where you leave the student loans as is. You can also do it on an income-based option, which is based on, well, what was happening and why they kind of came up with the income-based option was a lot of people were graduating college and were struggling to find work, or were not finding jobs in their preferred profession. And they were taking jobs in an income level below what they were expecting. And so they said, you know, I can't afford these payments that you've set for me based on this job that I have now. So they came out with income-based repayments. And say, okay, you're just getting in your career, or you're finding your path to your final position. We'll base it on your income. And as your income goes up, we will ratchet the payments that are due up to match your income increases. Also, student loans do have a forgiveness feature to them. There's a couple different ways about it. Depending on the profession that you go into, there are programs where after so many years, your remaining student loan balance is forgiven. That's awesome, right? No more student loans? So the different professions, some are educators, some are in the medical field, some are for government employment if you work for the state or the county or something like that. And then your student loans, I believe it's after 20 years of paying your student loans, and you still have a balance, then those are forgiven. So the question, kind of back to your point, is which is the better option? Most likely, if you do income-based repayment, you're more likely to have a student loan balance 20 years out, and then it would be forgiven. The question is, do you want student loans that long? Do you want that obligation for that long? Can you get rid of them quicker? Possibly. Does that make sense so far, guys?
Hey, Mark, is there a point where student loans affect your credit score?
Do student loans affect your credit score? The amount of debt you have can impact your credit score. So yes, if you're missing payments, that will impact your credit score. Because when you go to apply for a loan, what the lender is looking at is how much do you make, how much total debt do you have, and how much does it cost you per month to service that debt. So basically, what are your monthly payments? And then they look at that, and based on their formulas, determine how much they'd be willing to lend to you. Now, the other part to this is consolidating student loans. So you guys in college, you guys have seen a lot of stuff about consolidating loans, right? Ooh, sounds great. Instead of 8 loans, separate loans, I can have one, and I can have one payment. Okay, that can work. But there's not a whole lot of savings to be found there, because typically what's happening is they're blending your interest rates. So ultimately, you're paying the same amount in interest, but it may look better. So if you have a 6% student loan and a 4% student loan, and you consolidate them, your interest rate is going to be about 5%. Does that make sense? Because they're just blending them and averaging out the student loans. If you consolidate your student loans, you are no longer eligible for any sort of loan forgiveness. That's something that people forget often, so think about that as well. So I think you guys know that I do, all of my examples are real life. This is gonna look super busy. But this is for an actual client of mine. I took off him and his wife's information. She's a doctor, and he has his master's degree, and he's a high school teacher. So they came to me last year and said, Mark, we need some help. You know, We're approaching 30. We have all kinds of student loan debt. We don't know how we're going to get out of it. So I said, okay, give me all your information, and I'll put it together in a schedule. All right? So these are all their separate loans. They got 4, 5, 6, 7 different student loans. Their total balance, 75,000. Over 75,000. Their monthly mandatory payments were $1,500. Sounds like a lot, but like I said, she's a doctor, so she's making some pretty good money, right? So I ran all these calculations, and I did it for a few years. So I took it out to December 2018, and I said, okay, if you guys continue doing what you're doing, at the end of 2018, doing your mandatory payments, you get your balance down to, we'll say, 41,000. It's still a lot, right? They took off 25,000 off their student loans in 2.5 years. But that's still a lot of money though. And this goes on for another 10, 12 years. So showing that to them was kind of unsettling. They made them nervous because they're like, that's still a lot of money. So I said, okay, what's your goal? What do you want to do? He said, how can we get rid of this quicker? Is there a way to do that? So this is going to go to your question specifically, but to all you guys. And this is the student loan example, but think of this for your car loan, your mortgage, anything. So I took their same payment schedule, and what I did was initially I bumped their payment up that they're doing by about $200 a month, okay? And we started applying it to some of their smaller balance student loans. Conventional wisdom is you want to apply extra payments against the highest interest rate loan. Yeah, that's true, because you get that paid off quicker. But if you have a smaller loan that you can knock out relatively quickly, you can do that, even if it's a smaller interest rate. But if you do that, you can get rid of it. And now the money that you were spending every single month on that, you can apply to a different student loan. Does that make sense? So take this one, we decided to use this student loan first. So they were doing $67 a month to it. We bumped it up to 3 years. And within 8 months, that student loan's gone. Just by an extra couple $100 a month. So that amount that we were paying, now we convert it to the next student loan. And that one's done a couple months after that. And it's just a domino effect. Onto this loan, onto this loan. So what I did was, every year on January, I assume, you both got jobs, you're gonna get a raise, right? Ideally. Let's put an extra $200 against your student loans per month. You got a raise, let's just pay down your debt. So using this domino effect, by 2018, the end of 2018, now they're down to $26,000 in student loans that they owe. Compared to just doing the mandatory amount every single month that the loan company told you, same scenario, they would still owe over $40,000. It's a huge difference by just making some small changes to what you're doing already. A couple extra bucks here and there, and moving that money over. Just because the loan is paid off, don't think, great, I got $67 extra a month that I can spend. Yeah, you do, but use that money wisely and apply it to your other loans. It's a busy spreadsheet, but do you guys follow along? Does that make sense? Unless you want to have $40,000 of debt, ignore all this. But I assume everybody wants to get out from under those student loans quicker. The other thing with student loans that I'll tell you, and this goes to any loan. Anytime you're making extra payments on a loan, you have to be very clear in specifying what that extra money is for. The lender is going to get an extra $200 and say, okay, because they automatically default it to next month's payment. What we're doing here is applying the extra money to the balance. So there's a big difference in doing that. Paying down the balance reduces the amount of interest that's being assessed or charged against you. And so, example is I met with another client who was doing really well. She's, Mark, I'm so excited, I'm doing great. I'm paying extra every single month for my student loans. So that's awesome. I looked at her account and there was no change in the balance. Nothing was decreasing like it should be. What had happened was she just assumed the lender was going to apply it to her balance, but instead they said, okay, this is next month's payment. Thanks for giving it to us early. We'll apply it next month. She kept doing that, and when we looked at it, she was a year ahead in payments. So she didn't owe a payment for a year, but nothing had changed with her loan. No money, no extra money was taken down or anything like that. The lender just said, great, we'll hold this for you and we'll apply it each month as your bill comes due. Nothing was accomplished in reducing her loan. So pay attention to that. Anytime you're making extra money or extra payments, you have to specify what it's for. Otherwise, they'll just think it's next month's payment that you're giving to them early. You want to make sure it's for principal payments only. If you ignore everything else I've said today, remember that, because that will follow you for the rest of your life. That goes for car loans, mortgages, anything. Questions, guys? Yes.
So I was just wondering if you think it's worth it to try to make payments on your loans before you graduate with how low interest rates are for federal loans and how much more that loan would have an effect on your quality of life now versus putting money from your future income.
So that's a good question. You're in school now. You don't have to make your loan payments. Does it make sense to put some money on it now? Yeah, I think it does, but it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, figuring out what your discretionary income is. How much do you have free every month or every year that you don't really need, that doesn't go towards your needs? And yeah, it makes sense to put it towards any of your loans, but I would look at what other obligations you have. Do you have a car loan? What is more of an immediate need to be paying down first? But paying it down early or paying it when you don't have to, that only helps you. Because even though interest rates may be historically low, here's the thing that people always want to argue with me about. Like, Mark, I'm not going to pay that off. I'm not going to pay that off because the interest rate is so low. It's dirt cheap. But it's still costing you money. That's why I argue with them. Yeah, it's only maybe 3% interest, but that's 3% interest that you have to pay someone else. Why don't you just get rid of that and save that money? You know what I mean? It's still a cost to you. Good question.
See, the thing you don't know and you can't predict is if you say, I'm going to wait on that, and then another opportunity comes up where, or not necessarily an opportunity, but your car comes out, you need a new car, or you have a chance to buy a house instead of renting or whatever, the more debt you have at that time, because your loan amounts on those things will be based on what percentage of income you have already tied up in debt. So that rate's going to go up. So you think you're saving money, but you can't predict that, because instead of getting a loan for 6%, if you have more current debt, it might be 7 or 8. So you're paying that interest later on in some other form when you think you're like, okay, I don't have to pay it now. And so even to your point, Justine, if you can afford the 200, the 195 or whatever it is, I would pay, because you can't predict how that's going to play out over your life in the next 10 years. And you may think you're saving a little bit here, or and it's going to cost you more later on, because your total debt impacts everything, including your credit score and any loan rates that you get in your future. So,
Great question. Any others? Did that answer your question earlier? Sort of.
Sort of like, I'm gonna pay, I would say like, I would say like, I'm gonna pay $200 regardless, because I can afford it. I just didn't know if it was better to.
it's your hands.
Okay, I didn't know if it was better to have them lower my like fixed whatever to $50 and then still pay the 200, have a good principal because I'm like still paying on it, or if it was better to just pay what they already have, the 200.
So by making a change to it and having them reduce what you owe now has the potential to cost more in the long run, because now you're extending the life of that loan because you're paying less now. Now, if you have them reduce, we have to do some math on it, but if you had them reduce it to $60 a month or whatever, but you're still paying $200 a month, in the end, you may get the same result that we're trying to do, but that may give you flexibility on a month-to-month basis. Where you want to do $200 a month, but your obligation is $60 a month, something comes up, you're not required to do that $200 a month. You can say, okay, you know what, something came up, I can't do the 200, I'm going to do 60 this month. And then next month, do whatever. The other thing to pay attention though is if you're making any sort of changes to your loans, pay attention to the details, the loan requirements, specifically towards prepayment. There's sometimes some lenders will include a prepayment penalty. Great, you paid us off early, but we're going to charge you an extra percentage because you did that. So you have to pay attention to the loan details of that. They'll get you one way or the other, right? Any other questions? So this may seem a bit into the future for you guys, saving for retirement, but I keep, not haunted by it, but I remember this often. When I was in college, I had a couple different jobs on campus, and I was considered a university employee, which means I was an employee of the state. And state employees have their own pension system. And as an employee, you were required to participate in the retirement plan. So what did that mean? I think it was 6% of my paycheck was put into a retirement account for me. Right. And the state and the school had their matching calculation. I think they put 10% on my behalf into the account. So why am I telling you guys this now? Because a lot of my coworkers, co-students, when we're filling out the employment application for that, a lot of them were upset, like, oh, I'm going to be out 6%. And another student said, no, it's no big deal because once the summer's over, the semester's over, and your job ends, you're considered a terminated employee, right? When you're a terminated employee, you have access to your retirement account, or you have the ability to access it. And so what these students were doing was, hey, I'm no longer an employee, I want my retirement money. They were short-sighted in that they said, great, I have $2,000 sitting there, I can take that now. But the negative to that is that $2,000 is taxable. So it's considered income. So short-sighted in that they wanted the $2,000, so they filled out the paperwork to get it. Income taxes were taken out, so say $200 comes off. And because taking money out of a retirement account prior to 59 and a half is another 10% penalty on top of that. So they could have just left the money there and saved their money in taxes and penalties. But they were short-sighted and said, I want that now. And they ended up netting like $1,500. So they lost money on the actions that they took. So you guys that are in college now, or you're working now and your employer offers a retirement plan, do it. You know, the minimum to participate in a retirement plan is often as low as 3% of your paycheck. That's not a whole lot of money. And the earlier you start saving for retirement, the sooner you can retire. You know, I work with a lot of clients that, you know, come to me in their 50s or 60s and say, Mark, hey, I'm looking to retire in 2 years. Here's my stuff. And I say, that's not gonna happen. You gotta work longer. You didn't save enough. You haven't saved long enough. So if you have the opportunity or ability to do it now, again, you may not think like, oh, it's 3% or it's 2% I pay. That is not gonna make a difference. It will, because you have time on your side for that money to grow. And you can retire more likely when you want than if you forego it or you take money out of your retirement account, like some of those idiot kids that went to school. So just to summarize this a little bit, think of your needs versus wants. Sounds really basic, but that determines all the actions that you make. It determines if you should be putting extra money on your student loans while you're in school, or you've graduated and can I afford to put extra money on my student loans? Patience and planning. You know, just because a new phone is out, does that mean you need it? Can you wait? What's the impact of being impatient and buying something immediately or spending it immediately? You know, now you're out that money where you could have planned, you know, weeks in advance, saved up for something, and been in a better situation. Bankrate.com, great resource for financial information. So you can go there. We talked about getting a credit card as a way of kind of getting started. You can go there. They have a credit card search tool, so you can filter down to your information. Where it's, I'm a student, I want a small credit limit, and I want a credit card that doesn't have an annual fee. You know, why would you pay money for the right to use that credit card? You know what I mean? So find one that's free. And find one that has like rewards too. You can do that. Get money back for the money that you spend on. They have other loan calculators there as well. So if you want to figure out how much a car is going to cost you, or what that loan payment might be, you can find all that information there. Annualcreditreport.com, that's where you guys can go to check your credit report, make sure the information is correct. It's free. There's going to be ads and stuff in there that's going to ask you to buy stuff. But to look at your credit report, you do not have to pay anything. Live within your means. Do what makes sense for you, not what makes sense for friends, coworkers, or anything like that. Make the financial decisions that fit your life. Pay yourself first, and your financial situation will evolve over time. As things change, as you graduate, as you get a job, as you get married or have kids, things change. These are all the basics that we talked about, but it all applies to the broader picture. You can apply this to different situations. Saving for college for your kids, saving for retirement. Same concepts, just maybe bigger numbers.